Hello, I am Will Moreland, a sophomore studying agricultural technology management here at Kansas State University. Besides my ATM major, I also minor in agronomy and agricultural economics. I grew up on a large farm in north central Oklahoma and south central Kansas. My background in agriculture is what gives me interest in the topic I am presenting, genetic modification, or genetically modified organisms. In this presentation, I plan to do my best to explain this subject as if all of you listening know nothing about genetic modification. I hope you finish listening with a better understanding of this technology and how it fits into modern agriculture. First off, let's talk about the most common types of genetically modified organisms in the U.S. The most common are corn, soybeans, canola, and cotton, in no particular order. The main genetic modification that these crops have in common is Monsanto's Roundup Ready technology. Yes, Roundup is a weed killer, and yes, it's sprayed over food that we eat. But it has been proven time and time again by independent companies, along with the Food and Drug Administration and USDA, that it is safe if used correctly. Where did GMOs come from? The first readily available genetically modified organism ever was the Roundup Ready soybean in 1996. Before 1996, plenty of crossbreeding experimentation had been done to get the best qualities from a certain type of plant, but never had a gene actually been inserted before. Pre-gene insertion, crossbreeding, and/or exposing a plant to minuscule amounts of something until it became tolerant was the only option. This was obviously an effective method as it has been used for hundreds of years, but it was very time-consuming. With the new gene insertion technology, though, these many generations of crossbreeding can be reduced to 1 year of breeding. The gene insertion simply relies on isolating a specific gene in one plant species that could be beneficial in another. Once isolated, it is removed and then inserted into the desired plant species it was intended for. Back to my family's connection on our operation with agriculture and genetically modified organisms. We do raise a few beef cattle, but primarily focus on grain production over thousands of acres of cropland. Our standard rotation involves wheat, corn, and soybeans, the latter of these two being almost 100% genetically modified organisms. For corn especially, we benefit from genetic engineering in more than one way. The most common is through Roundup Ready technology, allowing us to keep our fields clean of weeds and plants other than corn without having to use tillage. Besides that, genetic modification has made our corn much more resistant to insects than ever before. These two types of traits are BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, and Viptera, both being a strong resistance to rootworms and other insects that are predators of a corn plant. The BT trait is actually a bacteria from the soil that is resistant to rootworms. It was then isolated from the soil and inserted into the corn plant where it was needed. This technology sounds much less scary when you learn where it actually came from, the ground. In soybeans, my family predominantly benefits again from the Roundup Ready trait to control weeds. Genetically modified crops are very common in the United States and can show up in thousands of food products due to their widespread uses as well. Genetically modified corn, for example, is most often used for corn syrup. As you may well know, corn syrup is a very common sweetener in hundreds of different food and drink products. Besides corn syrup, cornstarch is also a common thickening agent in many foods and other products that we often consume. For soybeans in the United States, the majority are used for animal feed through soybean meal. Theoretically, this soybean meal still ends up in our food supply through the end meat product of, say, beef or pork that we consume. Besides soybean meal, though, soybean oil is a common cooking oil that can be used to replace or in conjunction with other cooking oils like canola and sunflower and olive oil. There are more concerns about genetically modified organisms than I could ever begin to touch on, but I hope to highlight some of the most common in this presentation. Consumers are often worried because science and food has been blended through genetic modification. Yes, that's somewhat true, but all science has essentially done is sped up the process of crossbreeding and natural selection. The next two concerns, though, go hand in hand. That it's just too new of a technology and therefore no testing has been done. Yes, genetic modification is fairly new, but truthfully, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, had finished preliminary tests and approved the Roundup Ready trait 5 years before it ever entered the market. Continuing since then, our governmental and independent food agencies have worked hand in hand to perform repetitive tests, ensuring these products are safe. They also test and retest any and all new genetically modified organisms before they could ever get to consumers. The truth behind genetically modified organisms is that they are very well thought out type of plant species. Especially when the Bt gene first hit the corn market, there was a giant amount of planning done and guidelines created to ensure that rootworms don't become resistant to this technology. The common term for this is refuge, in which producers are required to plant a certain percentage of their corn acres to non-Bt corn for a refuge area for the rootworms. This allows the rootworms to still damage those refuge acres while ensuring that they won't only have the Bt corn to attempt to eat on and potentially become resistant to. Besides this refuge for Bt, all herbicide application for genetically modified crops has very strict guidelines as well. Just a few parts of these guidelines is the maximum allowed amount of a given herbicide that you can spray on an acre, and the actual time during any growing cycle that it is allowed. On top of these regulations, producers must buy their seed and herbicide through a certified dealer, who serves as another check that the producer is following the guidelines. Finally, improper usage of seeds or herbicides can and will be found before a producer's crop hits the grocery store, and that producer could be held liable for millions of dollars worth of contaminated grain at that point. As hopefully shown on the last slide, GMOs have already been proven and tested many times. The purpose of our governmental food agencies is to ensure that all food in the United States is safe, whether genetically modified or not. Besides that, they are proven. I hope you've seen how necessary this technology is. From weed control to pest control to even helping breed for drought tolerance. In all of these ways and more, genetic modification is a giant necessity in America's food system today. To everyone who has listened to this presentation and taken time to think about it, thank you for truly getting involved with this new and controversial subject. If you have any questions, concerns, or further comments about genetically modified organisms or agriculture in general, please contact me. Again, I am Will Moreland, and my cell phone number is 620-892-1026. My email address is wwill@ksu.edu, and I will be sure to get back with you as quickly as possible with any of your possible questions or concerns.